Welcome back to the show, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, heroes and villains. I know your time is precious, so we're going to get right into today's show. In today's show, we're going to be discussing team building, mental training, and growth. If you've been listening, you know I've had some incredible women come on lately, and we're definitely not stopping today. In today's show, I'm going to introduce to you Renee Lopez. Renee played college soccer and graduated with her undergrad degree in elementary education. Her graduate degree is from the University of Florida in exercise science with a concentration in sport management and pedagogy. As a 17-year coaching veteran, Renee Lopez is an expert in the college recruiting process, leadership training, and team culture development. As a United States Soccer Federation and National Soccer Coaches Association of America licensed coach, she has recruited and produced 3 All-Americans and has been honored as Coach of the Year by her peers. In addition to serving as an NCAA compliance director, she has learned the recruiting process from having worked as a high school varsity head coach for 3 years and a college coach for 14 in NCAA Division I, II, III, and NAIA. Renee has learned what it takes to succeed in leadership, recruiting, and team development. Through her RL Academy, she offers seminars and consults on the college recruiting process and how to become a student athlete. Without further ado, I want to welcome Renee Lopez to the Sports Mastery Podcast. Renee, is there anything that I forgot to mention?
Well, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it. I think you did covered it quite well, and it's been an exciting journey in coaching. And now, as I've kind of transitioned into being more of an entrepreneur and focusing on leadership development and as well, and obviously the research for my upcoming book, and I've done a lot of work with the John Maxwell Team as a certified speaker, trainer, and coach for them, as well as for the Jon Gordon Company, 3-Dimensional Coaching, and the Positive Coaching Alliance. So those are some organizations I've been stepping my toes into as I transition out of being a full-time coach into being an entrepreneur. So it's been a whirlwind over the past few years.
When I was looking you up and doing the research, I really wanted to get you on the show once I found out that you were a part of the John Maxwell group. I have a gentleman coming on, I want to say next week. I have a gentleman that'll be coming on, Dr. Ben Wax, who's a part of the John Maxwell group. His show will probably air by the time or stream by the time yours comes out. But from there, right now I'm currently reading the 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership. I'm working through that with a few of my athletes right now. So it really made me want to press the issue in terms of getting you on the show because I knew that you would be able to add some value.
Absolutely. It's a great book. I'm glad you're reading it. It will definitely, it is one I highly recommend. It's one that I definitely encourage anyone who wants to, strive in terms of developing their leadership. I think is a phenomenal book. And there's lots of other ones. John Maxwell's written over 100 books on leadership. So I can single out a few of them, but it is very hard for me because I love a lot of his work and what he's done.
Having been a coach for 14 years across all levels, including NCAA Division I, being a head coach, in your opinion, what are the most important attributes you found in building a team, Renee?
Well, I really took on the idea of really having a focus when I was working with my teams. And I started to evolve over a few years. In my younger years as a coach, you still try to figure things out. But, as I got older and been more successful, I started to realize there was really 3 components that took place in successful teams. And we started to put together an acronym called the CIA. Now, not what you all think of the CIA here in America, but not quite the same thing. But I think it's really interesting. It's a really easy way to remember the idea of being a part of a team and what does team culture look like. And CIA stands for character, integrity, and accountability. Character is really becoming who you are called to be. I believe that you learn your calling over the time, especially with the college students. 18 to 22-year-olds, they may change their major 3-5 times. That may happen over the course of their college career. But it really is the idea of stepping into what you're called into being and be able to really use your passions to be able to impact others and will always lead to more success if you're using your passions. And I think that's a really key component. And that was something we really emphasized in our culture with our team, that they could step into the roles that they were called into being. And, with that comes integrity. And, integrity, especially in this day and age of sports, like it is so man, there's so many opportunities where people can make the wrong decision just because nobody's watching. And, I look and I define integrity as doing the right thing, especially when nobody's watching. So it may be picking up garbage, across the field, or it may be following the rules on the field or on the court or whatever it may be of what sport you're playing. But it may also be, you think about that and how that translates to the business world and thinking, not everybody's watching you over your shoulder every single day, but, you could be cheating the system and you could do the wrong things. But, having integrity is really doing the right thing, especially when nobody's watching. And, I think with that comes accountability. You need to make sure that you have people in your life to help keep you on track. That may be your teammates if you're on a sports team. But again, you look into the business world, or you're going to have people that are around you and your colleagues hopefully are help direct you and guide you. But also there's a huge importance that I find, obviously being a part of the John Maxwell Team and Jon Gordon Company, and, is having mentors around you to also point you in the right direction and call you out when you're not going in the right steps, taking the right steps to move forward. So I think it's really a really important thing if you kind of put all of these things together, CIA, character, integrity, accountability, that really is, I think, a facet that if we can kind of embrace those ideas, it will literally transform the culture in which you're working in. And it's something that I have used with teams for many years, but now I look and I say, wow, it transfers over to almost any environment where you have a group of people that have to stay focused and do the right thing.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you're listening to this, if you're a student athlete, if you're a coach, especially the parents who are really synergized with their kids who happen to be student athletes, listen to what Coach Lopez is discussing today: character, integrity, and accountability. If you're a leader, your accountability is going to increase. And I realize with that, sometimes with more leadership roles, you're accountable for more. It brings about more stress and pressure. But if you constantly hone in on your character, keep your integrity intact, you are going to build a championship team, not only on and off the field, but you're going to increase your chances of success in the classroom and when you get to the collegiate level. Renee, did you have any more that you'd like to add? Because I really appreciate your character, integrity, and accountability when it comes to building a team. That is phenomenal.
Well, I think, the other part of all of that really comes into the idea of, are you working to always grow and always looking to expand yourself? And, obviously with John Maxwell training and being a certified speaker training coach for him, I work with Fortune 500 companies, but I also work with non-for-profits and community groups and churches and different sports organizations. And, I've been able to utilize a lot of his body of work to, discuss culture and creating a culture that's positive and effective, but also developing confident leaders. And I think, one of those ways to become a confident leader is making sure that you're constantly growing. And, one of the books that John Maxwell wrote is called 15 Invaluable Laws of Growth. And one of the laws that he talks about in that book is called the law of the rubber band. And it's the idea that the growth stops when your tension between where you are and where you can be. And you start to think about that. Being a coach, especially a soccer coach, I've repaired a lot of soccer nets along the way. They get torn in the wind, or you may have bunnies eating at them or something like that. But we utilize these ideas to fix those soccer nets, something called a zip tie. I think most people have wrapped up their garbage in zip ties, or, you can use them for a lot of different things. But I challenge all of your listeners to think this way. Are you a zip tie or are you a rubber band? Because a zip tie, once you put it together and you have marked its point, you really can't grow any farther. They can't do anything better. As opposed to a rubber band. A rubber band can stretch. It can really force you out of your comfort zone. And, if we look at that in terms of our personal growth, stretching requires change. It really does it requires for you to take a step to really be able to make an impact and leave a legacy, and also be able to make an influence in terms of those around you. But you've got to be growing yourself. And in order to grow yourself, you have to really step out of your comfort zone. And, for a couple examples of that, I look and I say, it's interesting. And I hear the statistic, and this actually scares me. 42% of college graduates never read a book after they graduate from college. Wow, that statistic blows my mind. And it makes me think, wow, we need to make sure that we are growing and be able to really serve others and be able to have a life of significance, because I think that's a lot of what we all want. We just don't always know how to get there and how to influence others. And, one of the things that John Maxwell talks about in the 15 Laws of Growth book is the idea that we have to be continuously improving. And, a mentality that I had with that, I came from a mental training coach, Tami Matheny. She worked with my teams for many, many years, and she was phenomenal. And she really talked to our groups about the idea of a Japanese business principle called Kaizen. And the idea is really having continuous improvement, that we're going to every day try and strive to be 1% better. We often say, oh, get 110% better. Well, that's not really attainable, and it's very hard to really put your finger on what does that mean. Instead, we always said 1% better every day. And if you have 30 girls on a team, I worked in college soccer, so 30 was a typical roster size for us. 1% better out of 30 girls, that means our team just got 30% better on a day at practice. Well, over the course of a week, you think about how many times that adds up, And so it may be just, working on serving a ball with your left foot, a little bit better. It may be taking rest, and unfortunately, that's not valued enough in sports these days. But I think it may be the idea is if you can take that concept to your team and say, today we want to get 1% better. What's going to be your 1% better? It may be, can I be a 1% better teammate? And that may be just be encouraging someone who's struggling. Can it be, I'm dealing with the recovery process, and hey, I may be an injury, recovering back from an injury. And it may just be doing your rehab, even though it may not seem like fun, but, maybe it's something you're really stretching yourself, or maybe it's you're asking your coach, how can I be a better leader? And that could be just the stepping stones to be able to grow and, to be that rubber band instead of being that zip tie. Because I think so often we just go through the motions and we become that zip tie and get really stuck. And, I want to try and encourage people to really think outside their box and how can they grow and what ways can they really step out and just get out of their comfort zone. And that's hard sometimes, for sure. But, if you can do it, you will see a lot of success.
Are you a zip tie or are you a rubber band? You have to remember that stretching requires change. Stretching requires change. Now, within that, me being myself and working with others, you've heard this phrase before, Renee. You have to get comfortable being uncomfortable. And what I found working with the student athletes over the last 8 years is that as soon as you start talking about mental training, I want you to list your fears. I've noticed that student athletes, they get fidgety, especially when it's their first time to just list out your fears. Now let's talk about, is this real or is it imagined? So in terms of mental training, what kind of insights can you offer or provide for our listeners of the Sports Mastery podcast?
Absolutely. John Maxwell talks about the law of the mirror, and you start to think about that is, you must see value in yourself in order to help others and to add value to others, so to yourself and to others. And, you think about this, people never outperform their self-image. They're never going to be able to outperform it because they have to really understand how, like you mentioned, overcoming their fears and how do they deal with mistakes. And, one of the things that I saw so often was high school athletes who were above and beyond and just really successful. And then they would come in as college freshmen and they were struggling. Now they could play at that level, but they were just struggling mentally because they're looking around and going, oh, wow, everybody's just as good as I am. And their identity was so much in that they were this elite athlete. And, so oftentimes it became a confidence issue and they would struggle with confidence. And, we started to have conversations with those freshmen who are really struggling. I would really talk to them and ask them, what are you saying to yourself? Write down what you're saying to yourself. And we started to realize that you had to guard your self-talk, because oftentimes athletes say worse things to themselves than they would even say to their best friends or their teammates. And so you think about it. No world championships, or Olympic gold medalists were accomplished by someone who just said, I can't do this. Instead is the idea that we have to really change our language and what we're doing. And again, going back to, like I mentioned, my mental training coach, Tami Matheny, she was phenomenal working with our teams. And she introduced a couple of concepts. And I think these are really easy, but wow, they can completely change your perspective. Is introducing the concept of get to versus have to. How often do we wake up and say, I have to go to practice. I have to go to do this. I have to go to school. Thinking through that and, I have to really struggle to get back from this injury, as opposed to I get the opportunity to go through rehab. I get the opportunity to have time to really focus on watching the game and analyzing the game from the sidelines. I get the opportunity to do fitness today. I get the opportunity to be able to learn from others. And if you think about that change, it is such a mindset change. And what I'd always say is, my student athletes would say, oh, we got to go to practice. And I would say, do you realize how many kids have emailed me just today who would die to be sitting in your shoes and have the opportunity to be a college athlete and be able to have the impact that you can have as a college athlete? And we also introduced the term yet. I haven't achieved something yet. So you look at that and you say, wow, coach, I'm really struggling to score goals from 30 yards out. And I would say to them, I haven't scored those goals yet. And what that does is it changes the focus of that it is a process to growth and it is a process to development. And if we can think that term of yet, it can completely transform everything that we're doing. Also making sure that we're being solution focused as opposed to problem focused. We often think of, wow, these are the 5 problems we have today. Instead, I used to tell my girls, hey, you guys have some complaints or some issues we need to solve. Okay. Don't come to me with a problem. Come to me with 3 solutions to the problem. And, whether it was where we're going to eat after a game and, hey, they wanted to go to the steakhouse. And I said, okay, our budgets might not cover that, guys, But I would say, okay, guys, come to me and tell me 3 other solutions you want. Okay, we've had Subway twice in the past week because of travel. What other options do we have? Let's try and find Panera or things like that. And they would come to me with solutions. And if you think that of how much that can transfer over to the real world once you leave college athletics or high school athletics, whatever it may be, wow, if you came to your boss with a problem, but you also came to your boss with the problem and 3 possible solutions, what it does is it changes the mentality of how people are going to view you. That you're not just a complainer, but instead that you're a person that's offering solutions. They may not take your solutions, and that's okay. But I think that can transform any culture in which you're working with, and I think we can really have that mentality of changing how we impact others around us. And I think it's really important that the growth that happens along the way is really partially by our self-talk and how we interact with others as well.
Ladies and gentlemen, this message is free from Renee Lopez. The only cost for you to do this for me is to go to iTunes. I want you to like, rate, and review this show and give her 5 stars for coming on the Sports Mastery podcast. Renee, I really appreciate what you were talking about in terms of what our student athletes say to themselves, especially when they don't even realize it from a subconscious or subconscious standpoint, and that further, it shows you how important positive, constructive self-talk is, having mantras, having affirmations when it comes to mental training. And the kids that I've been able to work with, and I don't know what your experience has been like, I know if I could reach those kids when the younger they are, the better they're going to become and embrace what we call mental training or mental toughness. I found the kids that I'm working with to be incredible. I've had a few athletes jump from NAIA to Division I as a sprinter and jump from a Division II to a Division I AA, as a football athlete, and without the mental training, without having systems and strategies to deal with stress and pressure, without goal setting, they wouldn't been able to hit those marks. I'm working on my first course right now. It's called The Edge, and you've hit on a lot of that. And The Edge is an acronym for effective action, discipline, growth, and expansion in terms of reflective thinking. And we've talked about growth a little bit during our conversation. One thing about creating a course, it stretches you because I'm working with a team of 3 other people. We've had to edit this thing twice in terms of the video, the audio. We've added PDFs in terms of assignments, and we've also added some quizzes and tests at the end of this. So for me, it's been stressful. Now I got to write the emails out. But what I found is we discussed this earlier. I've been uncomfortable. It's been stressful because I have to have a team. I have to have a coach. You know what I mean? We're working together, and now I'm being stretched. So I have to be the rubber band. You know what I mean? I can't be the zip tie. So in terms of growth for you, what has been your single biggest growth opportunity for you personally?
Wow. Well, there's a lot I could answer that question in terms of different times of being a coach. And, you grow quite a bit as a coach. And when you're coaching 25, 30, 18 to 22-year-old women, I can tell you no day is ever the same. But I think, for me, the biggest growth has been as I've stepped out of college coaching after 14 years of being a college coach. And I've now been focusing on my business full time. And, it is part of that process is, I do a lot of consulting with families and helping them through the college recruiting process. And as well as I do seminars all across the country. And I'm actually in the process of building up my own course as well. And I run a Facebook group for parents on the college recruiting process. And all of those things are great and challenging, but I can tell you my biggest part of this process is that I have a book that will be coming out this early 2018. And what it is a book on the college recruiting process. We've interviewed 35 college coaches to really get a handle on what is college recruiting and what does it look like. And there's so many misconceptions that are out there in the media. A lot of people have watched the movie The Blind Side, and they all think that's how college recruiting goes. And I say, wait a minute, hold on, let me really reframe a lot of your thought process and what it looks like. And so I've actually interviewed 35 college coaches. It's been quite a daunting task. Those guys are all busy, I can tell you that. But across all different sports, across all different divisions, we have junior college coaches, NAI coaches, Division III, Division II, Division I. And, we have people that we've interviewed, including some ACC coaches and things like that. One of my very good friends is the University of Virginia head women's soccer coach, and he's also an assistant coach for the U.S. women's national team. And in 2015, when the U.S. women's national team won the World Cup, in Canada, and he's actually one of my interviews, and in that process, we had some delays and such like that because I was trying to get scheduled for him, and he's like, I'm traveling with the national team, and so trying to get some of those things together has been a process for sure, but it has stretched me, and as we're putting the editing process together right now and going through all of that, it has been an amazing growth opportunity for me. I've never written a book before. I've done a lot of media, obviously, as being a coach. But I've had a lot of opportunities with this focus on my business full time. And, I've been able to be on multiple podcasts and a lot of press. And as well as, one of the highlights is being able to, in a span of about a month and a half, I was on Sirius SM radio as well as ESPN radio. And those could be a little daunting, a little scary to do of interviews. But so you're much kinder than they are, I can tell you that. But that's been a process and a growth process for me and stepping out of my comfort zone. I understood recruiting. I just didn't know the process of working with a publisher. And I have a phenomenal publisher called Black Card Books. And I have to give a shout out to Jerry Robert and JG Francoeur, my president, my CEO of my Black Card Books. They are phenomenal in helping me. And, like I mentioned earlier, in order to grow, we need to also make sure we have mentors around us. And I think it's really key to have people that are steps ahead of you and can help, guide you and bring you up a couple steps along the way. And I think, they've been phenomenal in that process. And, I love being able to have mentors to help me. And I think that's important for no matter what step you're taking in your growth, and making sure there's other people around you to help support you as well. So it has been a process. I can definitely say that for sure. But it's been fun, and it's been overwhelming at times. And there's days you want to quit, but then I have to remember that I need to also give myself a dose of my own medicine of I get the opportunity to write this book. I don't have to write this book, but I get to. And it's just not finished yet. We're getting there as well. So I have to give myself a dose of my own medicine.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Ladies and gentlemen, student athletes, especially parents out there and coaches, if you're listening to this, you have to remember that our student athletes, they need mentors, and they need to be around other student athletes that are aspiring to do something great in order to grow. So in order to become a leader, or once you get to that leadership level, you have to remember you're going to have more responsibility. You're going to be held accountable more. You're going to have to learn to hold other people around you accountable. And what comes out of that is stress. What comes from that? Oftentimes it can become pressure. So we have to put ourselves in a position to remember, don't be the zip tie. Let's be the rubber band, because we can manage our stress, and we're always going to have more opportunities. So at the end of the day, we have to practice, compete, and reflect. And some of that reflection could be failures. You're going to fail. But I always tell my athletes, Renee, I don't care if you make a mistake, as long as you're giving 100% effort. If you're doing that 1% that Coach Renee Lopez said, give me 1% every single day. I promise you, you will grow, because everything happens in degrees and stages. Renee, is there anything else that you would like to discuss or leave my audience with? I definitely need you to let my audience know where they can learn more about you at. And I know you have a book coming out at the end of this year. Will we just find that on Amazon, or will you share that link with me when that comes out?
Sure. Well, let me mention one other thing. I think, you mentioned about adversity and how do student athletes deal with adversity. When I interviewed all these coaches for my book, after we went, beyond the X's and O's and thinking of, how great of an athlete they are, as well as their grades and things like that. The number one thing that came up from college coaches is looking and seeing how student athletes deal with adversity. And if they dealt with it in a positive way and productive way, that was what college coaches were looking for. And I think that's a really important aspect to have. So, I would love to connect with your listeners. And I'm going to be honest with you, it may be the fact that I just went through Irma and the hurricane hit my neck of the woods and it went through the eye of the storm. I may have lost my mind, but I want to offer out something free to your listeners. If they are interested, if they are kids that are looking to play at the college level, I actually have 2 different special reports right now that are on my website for free. Yes, you heard me say that right. One is a special report on leadership characteristics that college coaches look for, a little bit of the research that I mentioned, as well as another special report is the strategies to emailing a college coach, what they should do, what they shouldn't do in the college recruiting process. And you can actually look at that information at www.rlopezcoaching.com, www.rlopezcoaching.com. If you want more information about my book, it is at www.lookingforafullride.com, www.lookingforafullride.com. And also on my my coaching website, you can also find some blogs. We've released a few different blogs, and also can have links into some of the work that we've been doing with connections with our Facebook group for parents. That is also free. All these resources I'm giving you guys of information are free right now. Obviously, my book will be coming out in early 2018, and we'll be selling that through our website as well as through different outlets. We're in the process of getting some of those things finalized right now. But, I would also love to speak with any of your listeners if they're just confused in the process. I will give them a free 30-minute time slot with me. If you'd like, just shoot me an email at info at lookingforafullride.com, info at lookingforafullride.com. So if you want some of those special reports, you want to get more information about our book, or if you want to just connect with me and be a part of our Facebook group as a parent or a student athlete wants to connect with me, I'd be glad to speak with them for free. Again, it's info at lookingforafullride.com. And those other two websites are www.rlopezcoaching.com, or my book specific website is lookingforafullride.com. And we would love to connect with you guys and help you guys along the way. That's my whole goal, so that way I can help you guys grow in the process, just like we talked about today. And I just want to thank you so much for having me on this podcast.